Ahora sí.
Dame un segundito, because como siempre, con 5 minutos necesito conectar todas las cosas.
Te entiendo.
Right. ¿Cómo está?
¿Qué es la que hay?
Aquí con con las últimas bregas ahí para el episodio de hoy.
You know, it's to be expected, Miss. I do not need tech support.
You know what it is? I'm still encountering the same issue where if I connect the microphone, I cannot connect my beats.
Y tú sabes que fracasamos porque eso salió en el último episodio y yo dije, okay, we'll leave that for Mofongo Mythbusters. Y un carajo that we left it for Mofongo Mythbusters. We left it, but the same.
We left
The
it.
same. You know.
We left it to talk about it again today.
Exacto. Tú sabes.
Muy bien.
Biggs, Jen, bienvenido. Our mods that are going to keep the weird comments and the lumpia dicks in check. What did I say that out loud? Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. You did. Okay, so you guys know that I am fine with blocking if someone gets problematic in the chat. If someone does come with estupideces, you guys are well within your rights to mute them.
Yes. Bienvenido, mi amor. Bienvenido.
That way, at least you guys know, we're trying to keep this as focused on the topic and what it needs to be. And honestamente, hoy en verdad no tengo la paciencia for any fuckery o por vergüencería, sinvergüencería. No, not today. So, mods, y'all got this. Thank you. I appreciate you guys for always protecting the integrity of our spaces. And, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep honest and open conversations where we're not going to be allowing misinformation to be spread, but also we're not going to be letting other people feel like they can run shit. So thank you. What up, though, Mia?
Pues sí. Estamos a ley de nada. Tú sabes. Aquí para prepararnos para el episodio de hoy. Tú sabes.
I'm actually really excited about this episode. Like, I feel it's going to be very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. The thing, the only thing is that, we're going to be the first Mythbusters where both of the main hosts, the duo, does not, carry a mustache, glasses, and bonnets.
Let me see. I'm trying to see if damn it, I need the little the little machine that has the sounds, right? Because that would have been like the whole good part after you finish that. To do that.
I thought you told me you had it.
No, I have the sound effects for the cheer, the clap, the laughter, the booing. Wow. Which will be a good one. Pero I feel like after you finish the would have been perfect. There you go, that one. I'm not good at sound effects myself.
Yeah.
Pero ya son las 3.
Muy buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Bienvenido a otro episodio de Mofongo Diaries. Un episodio muy especial en el día de hoy. Mofongo Mythbusters. Mierda.
And this is where we cue. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming in today. We are going to attack some common misconceptions and misinformation that seems to plague our community. No matter how many times we try to address it and be like, no, this is wrong. I'm sorry, Tia Consuela. Las cosas no son así. Tío Tony, no. But, maybe if we talk to the masses somehow, some way, we'll be able to break the sad news to some of our family members. So please sit back, enjoy, and let's get to it.
And before we get to it, actually, yo quisiera disculparme. I would like to apologize to all the people waiting for last week's episode that it didn't come out because, unfortunately, it got really spicy it got really controversial. We actually put our money where our respective mouths were when we said that that's what we came here to do. So it really became controversial. So there had to be a lot of editing for podcast wise for the distributors. So I really want to apologize everybody that got cut off, people that I we wanted to be heard in the main episode, but it got too hot for TV, it got too hot for TikTok, and we really had to like unfortunately reel it back in. So do not worry about that. If you guys are really interested, we will be setting up in the very, 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 very near future a Patreon where you can have access to the full, raw, unlimited episode. If you're really dying for that tea, you can hear it there in our Patreon and subscribe there and get all our mini after dark, all our spicier content. We might even throw a Tandwai diary every now and then
Oh,
in there.
yes, because those are good.
Yeah. So anyway, now back to it. And I appreciate our fans for understanding how it got spicy last time and how we need to like departmentalize the episodes. But now back to you, Mimi.
So today, like I said, we are not trying to raise anyone's blood pressure. We're not trying to have you question your Puerto Rican identity or go into an existential crisis because all these things that you thought were true are not. So we're gonna apologize in advance if we do raise your blood pressure. That's not our intention. So with Mofongo Mythbusters, right? We are consistently seeing different tales about our community, right? We speak a broken Spanish. My favorite is whenever they tell me I speak in reggaeton. The Taínos went extinct. There are no longer any Taínos walking the face of the earth. When we talk about all Puerto Ricans have triracialness. These are all things that we are going to attack today after a lot of extensive research and the last minute ideas, because of course ADHD. But we are going to tackle this and hope that I don't want to say I hope we don't piss people off because that's kind of our spiel, right? When we call people out and make them see themselves in the mirror. But also, hopefully, moving forward, we will start sharing accurate information and, we'll take the initiative amongst ourselves to debunk these in real time, right? So,
Exactly.
the first one, which is my favorite, right? Because everyone knows that I always make fun of it, right? I always say that. Someone here on TikTok had told me one time that my feet represent the Puerto Rican identity, right? Because I am consistently wearing slides, so I tan differently. So my toes are Taíno, where the band is at is a Spaniard, and then from the rest of my foot to my knees, that is my African ancestry, right? I also make the joke that unfortunately my dad left the melanin and the height on the sheets when I was conceived, and this is the reason why. I am fair skinned, I have light eyes, I have lighter hair. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't have the ancestry, right? But sorry to burst your bubble, not all of us are triracial. So,
We are not. And that is another myth that we need to cover, but continue.
so us as Puerto Ricans, right? We have more people now doing the DNA, doing the lineage, doing their genealogy, right? Because they really want to get to know who they are, right? We see this more within the diaspora because we had this very big, very recent disconnect between Puerto Ricans on the island and Puerto Ricans here. So a lot of us now are doing this, and so many people are surprised when they find out that, granted, we knew we had African ancestry, we knew that we had European ancestry, but a lot of people don't understand that we have Middle Eastern ancestry. Some of us have Asian ancestry. You know, there's our what makes us us is just a complete amalgamation of so many nationalities and races that came to the island bumped uglies with, a couple of people there, some by force, some willingly, because we're not going to negate the ugly part of our history. And lo and behold, it became who we are today, that we come in every size, shape, color, different hair texture. Some of us will lean more to our African ancestry. Some of us will lean more to our Taíno ancestry or our European ancestry, right? And then some of us, you're just wondering, like, ¿cómo carajo con dos padres que son de la isla, uno blanquito, uno morenito, y salió el niño que parece un indio o parece que haitiano, right? Because that's just what the genetic lottery really is. You can't look at us and be like, that's a Puerto Rican. This is what they look like. I'm sorry, we all do not look like a fucking pot of ajo con gandules y pernil. Punto y final, right? We also have this instance where we have people saying that we are the perfect race, right? There was a study, a paper that has been, debunked, stating that Puerto Ricans are the perfect mixture for the ideal race because we have our African, European, and Taíno ancestry. Sadly, no. We are not the only nationality that has triracial ancestry. So please, when you hear your tía María or your tío Carlos or la vecina diciendo no, que los boricuas son perfectos, son la raza perfecta, por favor, do our community and our future generations the service of correcting what is incorrect.
Yes. And the fact that the triracial narrative is a gross oversimplification, because the fact is that we are way more than triracial. You know, we are, it's not a correct term. Like, you will find Puerto Ricans that find Irish ancestry in their DNA, Portuguese. You will find a lot of different genetic mixtures. So we are way more than just three. Even if you go back to the fact that this is an unpopular fact, but this island was not just inhabited by Taínos. We have a rich mixture of of indigenous tribes here that they were on the island when they existed. Even archaeologists have found, for example, intermarriage with members of tribes like the Kalinago, which misrepresented all the time, which is another myth that was not on the list. But when they're represented as cannibals that came in to kidnap Taínos for cannibalism purposes, which there's no archaeological record of, period. There has been no bones found in the Caribbean with this evidence of cannibalism, first of all. Second of all, if this was such a cut dry relationship, why do we constantly find pottery for, intermarriage purposes in which both Kalinago and Taino art are mixed within the same pottery, as a symbol of identifying the union between two people from different tribes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry for interrupting you, Mimi. Que es la que hay? Caramel, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Not me again, muting myself and talking. I need to get better at this.
Yes.
I think the issue is, though, for a lot of people is just that they already have such a distaste, right, for the fact that a lot of us have the ancestry from Europeans, and we know how fun Europeans were when they were quote unquote discovering places that were already inhabited, or the gift that continues to keep on giving even now in 2026 of colonization, right?
Fun
But
times. Yeah.
people still cannot seem to understand that we're still a mix, right? We had pirates, we had different tribes of Taínos on the island. We had Portuguese, we had Italian, we had Spaniards. You know, we've tasted every nook and cranny into what made us into what we are now. And I feel like a lot of people still cannot grasp that because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, yeah, we're Spaniard because the Spaniards, you know, colonized us and this is what it is. And then when they find out that they have Ashkenazi ancestry, or they find out like, oh shit, I'm not Spaniard, I'm actually French, or I have, you know, ancestry from Portugal, or their mind gets blown because they've just constructed this perfect view within their heads that that is who we are across the board. And sadly, again, like I need you guys to hold your tías and your tíos and your primas. Si todavía tienes tu abuela y tu abuelo, tu mãe, tu pai, aguántale la mano and dile, you know, I'm sorry to break your heart, boo boo, but así no son las cosas, right?
Yes, yes. Your family members, your and again, como dijo Mimi, tía, las primas, you know, hold their hand in a consensual way and tell them, I hate to break your heart, but this isn't how it works. Even if you're the type que la rima, you know.
As long as it's
So,
consensual. Consent is the
as
big
long as
thing,
it's
guys.
consensual, yes, you know, we're not here to judge. We're just here to give everybody a safe space and anonymity if you require it, you know. Because, yeah, that.
So now since we touched on the Taínos, right? You know, yeah, we have it debunked. We are not all triracial. We are a mix of todo lo que había en ese mundo en ese tiempo, honestamente.
Exactly.
Pero como ya hablamos de los Taínos, this is your area of expertise, right? Because it's now that I'm kind of diving into it a little bit, but you know, we've had instances where I was introduced to the community, you know, certain people that I had interacted with kind of left a bad taste in my mouth where I didn't really want to know what my ancestry was, if I do have any indigenous ancestry, right? Because just I don't. It became very culty, and it is very culty with certain groups, right? When we're talking about this, because now we have Puerto Ricans in New York who are demanding that the island belong to them solely, and that generations of people that have lived there need to get the fuck up out and get out of there, right? Because they are finding that they have Taino ancestry, and because those were the original inhabitants of the island, they feel that that is within their right, their legacy to be the sole inhabitants of the island. So this is when I give it to you, so you can now school everybody on the Taínos.
Yes, and I find that so hilarious, by the way, because you know I like to call those people Arawak and Karens. You know, I because they be thinking they have more knowledge than everybody else, and they'll even be going so far as saying, no, this is the truth, I know this because this is how it went. You know, I wasn't there, but I practically was there, you know, for no reason whatsoever except, you know, I'm the authority, you know, and I know more because we have a Casicasco in New Jersey that has more information than on the island, you know, and it's like, bro. But the fact of the matter is that aside from these people, there's also this narrative that persists that the Taino went completely extinct, you know, and this is also misconstruing records of a devastated population and record keeping by the Spaniards in the 1500s, and how in 1542, supposedly around that era, the Spanish, like, you know, started to talk about the treatment of the people and sending decrees that were never really honored or anything, because I could stay here hours talking about all the decrees, all the treaties that were signed between the Taínos and the Spanish crown and were eventually not honored, or the distance was too far for anybody to monitor people applying them or going by them. But the fact of the matter that it is ridiculous because, yes, we have a devastating population decline, but we also have small pockets of survivors that moved around, that moved from different places, because we also forget that our people were very knowledgeable in seafaring and moving from island to island as they needed. And we have much genetic research, even more modern one, that proves that indigenous Caribbean survival is was a true thing. And you can see it in the genetic records. You can see it in the present day of populations of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Cuba, the Caribbean, you know. But DNA alone does not paint that picture. We have so much of their culture embedded in our own culture that you can't deny that there is survival of it. And one of the things that I love to mention also that people forget is that we're not only reconstructing through various movements. Archaeologists and anthropologists are back in the Orinoco observing to reconstruct and see what can they put back together from Arawak tribes that are still alive in the Orinoco today. Like, they're not necessarily Taíno, but they are of that Arawak family that keeps a lot of the same structures that we have today. Now, this doesn't mean all the Taíno are still alive in the Orinoco River and everything. These are different Arawak tribes that have evolved over time and but have preserved a very indigenous ways of life. And are they Taíno? No. Do they share a lot of traits with the Taíno? Yes. Is it enough traits in a broad spectrum that archaeologists and anthropologists can take things and reconstruct and have a better idea of how the Taíno lived? Definitely. Are they tied, you know, genetically to these people? That's where the answer gets a little bit more complicated, but loosely, you can say, yes, they do have some semblance and some connection to the Taínos. And we are discovering way more through them today. And they have even been using these tribes to talk to them because they interconnect with deeper tribes within the Amazons and the Amazonia. And they even talk to them because they also relay information of uncontacted tribes. So to say that the Taino are extinct is not only borderline misinformation, it's a very irresponsible oversimplification of the picture that we have today of not only the Taino, but the entire Arawak family of languages and indigenous people.
Thank you very much. One of our mods did make an announcement in the chat. When we do allow guests to come up, if you do have anything to rebuttal as far as anything that has been busted in this episode of Mofongo Mythbusters, please have your sources ready. We do not do trust me, bro. We do not heat. We do not do I heard from a friend of 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 a friend, and that is your source. Please, if you decide to rebuttal anything that is discussed in this live, have your sources ready. Erlos, we will be bringing guests up after 3:45 to 4 o'clock. So thank you for requesting, but for right now, we'll bring people up later on. It goes both ways. Yes, we have actually a response now in the chat. Whatever we do have that we are claiming, right? I do not ever make believe that I am more knowledgeable than what I am, right? This is why another reason why I let Lansons take the lead on this is because he is very well informed and has studied. I'm sorry, I'm gonna kind of humble brag about you right now. He was gonna do the whole anthropology, archaeology thing where he did touch on and learn a lot about the Taíno ancestry. So he is what I call my resident expert on all things Taíno.
And for the record, most of my sources come from the University of Puerto Rico, the Rio Piedras campus, el recinto de Rio Piedras, just for sources purposes. Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is not only make people knowledgeable, but learn how to talk about these subjects.
Without
Because
getting big mad. Without getting big mad.
yes, because now we might enter into a little bit of a commercial for prescriptions, because some people need to be medicated with knowledge. Okay, they need to be medicated with knowledge because are you suffering from social media historical syndrome? Symptoms may include beginning every sentence with actually or pero en verdad, you know, refusing to cite sources, which we are trying to cover here, using memes as historically accurate proofs, believing that YouTube comments are peer reviewed. If you have any of these symptoms, you might suffer from being a whiny little know-it-all bitch. Ask your doctor if historical accurateness is right for you. Back to you, Mimi.
So now we're gonna get into my favorite debunking, right? Of my favorite myth right now. Because I will be honest, right? When I was little, yes, Spanish was my first language, right? So I have a sibling who's always making fun of me that he used to ask me to like give him a kiss, and I would be like un peso, and I would, that was my translation, like beso, queso, peso, whatever. That's how we communicated, right? Because I didn't speak a lick of English, he didn't speak a lick of Spanish. My brother to this day is a no sabo, but that was the disconnect that we had, right? And then as I got older, yes, I still spoke Spanish fluently, but I kind of took on a Dominican accent, right? Because my stepdad was Dominican. Little by little, my family became very much so mixed as Puerto Rican and Dominican, right? So I started to pick up on things more so of Dominican lingo. And it's now that I'm really brushing up on my Puerto Rican slang, los dichos que se dicen en la isla, que en verdad yo no sabía. Y poquito a poquito se me está notando el acento que sí soy puertorriqueña. No voy a decir que soy boricua, that's just me with my personal preference. Pero voy a decir que el acento mío, and I give I give credit to this to my friends, people that have become a very big part of my life that have helped me reconnect with that. But I am fucking sick and tired of being told that I speak in fucking reggaeton. ¿Ok? Que nosotros no decimos la R, que en vez de decir en verdad, verdad, estamos diciendo en verdad, verdad. ¿Verdad? O una cosa que era la favorita mía, que mi padrastro me decía, tú vas a hablar claro, ni te atrevas a decir ajo, pejo, cajo. Tú lo vas a decir como se dice la correcta, la forma correcta. So I taught myself to say arroz. That I'm rolling my tongue, my R's. I say perro. I say carro, right? Because this is something that was kind of ingrained in me from very young that we spoke chopped and screwed, right? And you see this on TikTok now, you see this on across social media, where it's like when you have one Latino and a Puerto Rican, how the fuck do they understand each other? Because our words, and my Mexican bestie will tell you my fucking favorite word to say is coger, right? Because for us it means to take, but vete coge eso, whatever. Whenever we're talking about go grab something in Mexican Spanish, coger is something that's very inappropriate. And to fuck with the people in Texas, I'd like, oh, ven, cógeme aquí. They're like, no, no diga eso es sucio, right? Because they didn't understand that for us, that meant something different. When I mean, technically, coger means to take. Like any Spaniard textbook is going to say coger is to take. but in Mexican Spanish is very different. So there's always
Yeah.
that disconnect where I'll say something and they're like, I need you to translate it for me. Right. And I'm not even going to say that that is something on them because I am guilty of that as well. When I'm talking to my friends from the island and they hit me with a word and I'm like, what does that mean? Like my mind is blown because I'm just like, this is like a new, excuse me, this is a new thing that's unlocked for me now because now this word means this and this word means that. I always thought that when I'm talking about certain people in a specific community, I would say la comunidad. I recently learned that when you're talking about people in this community, you say el ambiente, which
Sí.
again, mind blown. Then let's also talk about the whole machina, máquina, ride debacle that we had, right? Where New Yorkers, specifically, Puerto Ricans in New York, New Yorkers, however you want to identify. A mí me da lo mismo. A lot of our words in New York just became, are just basically English words with a Spanish accent, right? Because I say el rufo de vez en cuando. People are like, no, el techo. And I'm like, okay, el rufo. Or when we went to carnivals in New York, era el ray, ¿verdad? Era el ray, para nosotros era el ray. Aunque yo sé que esa es la manera, tú sabes, no como se dice en la isla y no voy a pelear por eso, pero para nosotros en Nueva York, un
Y,
ride era on a, it was a ride it was an actual ride, right? Pero en
y
Puerto
ves,
Rico
y
se
por
llama
eso,
machina. Sorry.
no, tranquila, y ves, y por eso es que, en verdad, yo no entiendo por qué los New Yorkers o los puertorriqueños de Estados Unidos te dicen que hablas en reggaetón, porque desde que yo te conozco, tú para mí nunca has hablado en reggaetón. Yo soy de Carolina, la cuna del
Oh shit.
reggaetón. Yo hablo más en reggaetón que tú, por bastante, por bastante. O sea, tú me escuchas hablar a mí, especialmente cuando ya estoy empezando a encabronarme y me sale el huele bicho. O sea, una sola palabra mía suena más hablando reggaetón que dos oraciones completas tuyas. Tú sabes. Yo no entiendo de dónde estos New Yorkers, de dónde estos puertorriqueños de Nueva York están sacando estos disparates, porque son sendos disparateros para el carajo, de que, tú estás hablando en reggaetón. Si tú estuvieras hablando en reggaetón, perdóname, I'm sorry con excuse me, ¿ok? Pero si tú estuvieras hablando reggaetón, a ti te dirían en realidad en la isla, tú tienes acento de Carolina. Tú hablas como si fueras de Carolina. Punto. Se acabó. Tú sabes. Y eso de Rufo, que tengan cuidado como lo hablen en la isla, porque eso está demasiado cerquita a la palabra tufo. Y cuando te dicen, mira, 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 cabrón, en verdad, búscate una botellita de Listerine porque tu tufo me tumba, ¿ok? Es como que, papi, eso está fuerte. O sea, eso está poniendo los pelos de mi nariz más rizos que un pelo de crica. Tú sabes, de lo malo que es ese tufo, cabrón. Lávate la boca, ve un dentista, busca un despojo de un santero que te quite esos demonios de las caries, de las muelas, ¿ok? Porque algo anda mal en esa boca, puñeta. Tú sabes, es como que, ves, eso para mí es hablar en reggaetón. Yo no he escuchado eso de ti, tú sabes.
No, pero fíjate, al principio, ¿verdad? Because era estando aquí en TikTok, ¿verdad? Que estoy aquí hablando con diferente gente, right? Que tenían más amistades que eran de Centroamérica, que eran de Sudamérica. Y ellos siempre, siempre me picotean con el fucking español. Pero, ¿qué significa esto? ¿Qué significa eso? Porque tú hablas así. Uno, yo me recuerdo una vez que me dijo que yo hablé como si no era educada. Honestamente, te voy a decir la verdad, yo no fui para la universidad. Pero no me van a decir a mí que yo no sé qué carajo yo estoy hablando porque soy un fucking nerd. ¿Entiendes? O para muchas cosas, yo sí sé qué carajo estoy hablando. Y como tú no me entiendes porque el español tuyo es diferente, bueno, ahí mismito is when we're supposed to come to an understanding. Right? Like, hey, This is what this word means for me. This is what this word means to you. Now we know that we can communicate better. But because our Spanish is looked down upon, vamos a decir, como dijeron en los comentarios, que es cafre, de la calle, tú sabes, el español de los jíbaros, lo que sea. That's the way that we talk, right? And because our dialect is very different, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, our accent comes more so, it's very similar to the people from the Canary Islands, right? I think.
Sí, you know, tiene sus similitudes, pero entonces en donde nosotros cambiamos bien brutal son en los anglicismos.
Okay.
O sea, los anglicismos y otros detalles. Hay un par de detalles más, pero entre ellos los anglicismos y la influencia del colonialismo de Estados Unidos han causado una evolución que nos hace unique y nos separa. Tú sabes. Porque si tú coges un clip de 30 segundos de alguien de las Islas Canarias y pones un puertorriqueño al lado, mucha gente te va a decir, yo no entiendo, son idénticos, no sé la diferencia. No, no son idénticos. Hay una diferencia.
There's nuance, cierta diferencia.
Exacto. Y a la que empieces a escuchar a un puertorriqueño encabronado a decir huele bicho, mascabicho o cualquier lexicon de bicho, entonces vas a
pescabicho, my favorite one.
Sí,
my favorite one, pescabicho. So now I have a
Exacto.
question, right, before we get into the next part of it. ¿Qué es lo que tú piensas? Para mí, right, aunque yo tengo los hijos míos, son no sabo, right? No te lo hablan pa' un carajo. Lo entienden en ciertas cosas, sí. Pero I was wondering, right, if we are talking about the diaspora moving back to the island, right, because we don't want further gentrification on the island. We don't want further colonization on the island. I honestly, and this is probably only my take, right, even though whatever, I personally feel that what we do need to protect on the island is the Spanish, our version of Spanish, our dialect. Do I feel that yes, a lot of people can benefit from learning English there? Yes. Do I feel that it should be mandated and I feel that we should be able to be culturally, vocally, however the fuck you want to put it, who we are? I think that's something that we need to preserve, right? But I am all for, because everyone knows that I'm very much so part of the gringo go home type shit, right? Because I do not want my people to be displaced on my homeland because they're trying to exploit us and push us out, right? And continue to do all these things where our people are going to continue losing the connection to the culture, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, being Puerto Rican and not being able to speak Spanish doesn't make you less or more, which I agree, right? There, I don't have a fucking scale heel that can tell you, oh, bueno, tú no haces esto, tú no eres puertorriqueño. Tú no haces esto, tú no eres puertorriqueño. I'm not no fucking body to pull anybody's Puerto Rican card, right? But that's just me. There's other people who feel more adamant about it, about what makes or, unmakes someone as a Puerto Rican. Me personally, though, I feel that you should learn Spanish. Even if you're learning it little by little, if you just want to learn the phrases, if you just want to learn, las palabras malas, the slang or whatever. Solamente if you want to listen and fucking sing along to fucking Bad Bunny. Preferably for me, which is what I'm doing now with my children, is focusing more on us being a Spanish speaking household. What do you think about that?
Yo estoy de acuerdo contigo. But I will clarify various nuances to that, porque hay una diferencia entre lo que tú implementas en tu hogar, en tu household with your kids, y hay una diferencia en lo que se implementa en la isla como tal. Porque que en la casa que se implemente aprender el español, definitivo, ¿entiendes? Sin embargo, on the flip side of that coin, tenemos también que yo sí siento que el currículo educativo tiene que incluir ambos idiomas, de la misma manera que en muchos de los otros países del mundo incluyen el inglés en su currículo del idioma porque es la lengua de un superpoder dominante que te abre oportunidades para trabajar internacionalmente en el mundo. Tú sabes, o sea, pero que identificarlo como parte de nuestra cultura el inglés, esos son otros 20 diferentes. Una cosa es académico para abrir oportunidades a generaciones futuras, otra cosa es integrarlo a la cultura. Son dos cosas
Yes.
diferentes para mí, tú sabes. Y especialmente cuando hay una gran parte de la población. No voy a decir la mayoría, porque yo en Puerto Rico me he encontrado gente que no sabe, tú sabes, o sea, y tú sabes que lo he dicho en episodios previos, o sea, yo, mira, ¿cuál fue el primer presidente de Estados Unidos? Ah, Washington. Tú no sabes inglés, ¿ok?
That
Tú no
part.
sabes inglés. Y hay mucha gente así. So, que hay mucha gente que es bilingüe. Yes, there are. Fluency, how fluent they are, that is a completely different subject.
I'm
Porque
famous for that. Tú sabes que yo soy famosa para eso. Que si yo no me sé una palabra en español, I'm like, anyway, so this is what I mean. Y después voy a seguir el tema en español because I just don't know that word or I don't know the correct pronunciation, right? Because there are people within our culture who are very much like, will do that. Ay, tú no hablas español bien. Oh, tú no en verdad no eres boricua. Tú no eres puertorriqueño, tú, or vice versa, where we have people, and I've seen this here where we have even Puerto Ricans, who are very Americanized, who will try to belittle or discredit someone because English was not their first language, but because they misspelled the word, they mispronounced the word, and now it's like they are the fucking authority. And I'm like, listen, fucking Merriam Webster, shut the fuck up. Por favor, respectfully, you know?
sí, y eso es una de las cosas que I was always amused en Carolina. En Carolina, at least my generation shut that down really quick. Porque alguien decía, pronunciaste el inglés mal. Y lo primero que hablaban era, ¿y qué carajo me importa de que lo pronuncie mal? Tú estás aquí en mi barrio. Tú estás aquí en mi calle. O sea, yo voy a decir lo que yo quiera en inglés de la manera que me salga de los fucking cojones. Tú
That
sabes,
part.
así mismo. Y porque en Puerto Rico, si hay una cosa que los puertorriqueños se lo he criticado, and I found amusing as well, es que el puertorriqueño es una de esas culturas que no le importa aprender inglés. O sea, la mayoría de la gente no le importa aprender inglés. Y cuando yo digo que no le importa, no es una situación de que yo me rehúso a aprender inglés y todo. Es que no, mucha gente no lo hace. Pueden estar conscientes del valor académico o el valor para trabajo, abrirte puertas y lo que sea. Pero el final del día es como que, no, es como que yo entiendo que esto me abre puertas o que es importante o lo que sea, pero eso no me importa. Y
Mm-hmm.
pues, pero aprendiste inglés. ¿Y por qué lo aprendiste? Porque estaba Love Island o este show en Netflix que no tengo nada que ver con español, y en verdad lo quería ver. Ese show está cabrón. Yo quiero escuchar y yo quiero saber lo que esta gente está diciendo. O sea, nuestras motivaciones son bien superficiales para aprender el inglés, en verdad.
Honestamente, tú sabes que yo te lo he dicho varias veces. Mi abuela vivió en Nueva York desde los 14 años, right? Again, I'm always going to shout out my grandmother. Her birthday was at the beginning of the month. She turned 79. I love you, honey. Pero ella todavía, she knows English, pero hay ciertas cosas que ella dice que la gente, las relajaban antes. Como, one of the biggest things for me to this day and age, I'm 41, it is always going to be Thanksgiving, el día de Thanksgiving. No es Thanksgiving, es el día de Thanksgiving. Si yo estoy en Nueva York y voy a ir para Uptown, yo voy para Washington Heights. Al que le guste, que no le guste. ¿Verdad?
Mi
Mi
mamá,
abuela no me dice,
mi mamá ni
mi
siquiera se
abuela,
molesta en pronunciarlo. Es el día del pavo en casa. En casa es el día del pavo. Ya.
mi abuela, because listen, I love my grandmother to death. She is so vulgar and I love that about her. Like, she tells you how the fuck it is. So, cuando me tiene que hablar malo, en vez de decirme fuck you, ella me dice fuck you, ¿verdad? Y así es. Es una palabra, F-O-K-U. That's it.
Sí.
no extra pronunciation. And those are just things that, because when our families, during the Great Migration, where so many people were leaving the island to come to the States, they picked up the English to the best of their ability, and we have people now to this day that are like, I didn't learn Spanish because my grandparents, my parents were from an era that it was frowned upon for us to speak Spanish, right? We see historical documents where in certain parts of the country, we were not allowed the same rights as white Americans, right? We had, no colors. We were classified in certain instances as colors. We were classified as indigenous, and we didn't have the same rights. Or a lot of us were also just classified as black, right? So for us not to shine the light on ourselves because of the way society was at that time, I know of a lot of people who were not taught Spanish. And let me tell you, it doesn't make you any less or more Puerto Rican. I wish a motherfucker would tell my daughters that they're not Puerto Rican, because they cannot they cannot give you a whole fucking dissertation in Spanish. Que se maman un bicho, honestamente. Right? But please, if my request is for everyone, if you are looking to reconnect with the culture, you want to be able to talk to the elders on the island, right? Because that's where a lot of things that aren't in history books, that aren't, on these peer-reviewed papers, that are not available at these universities, a lot of these stories are personal experiences of the elders on the island, and you want to be able to get that history passed down, even if we have to rewrite it in English, so we can have our own documentation. But I urge everyone, because this is how we can keep the story and the history alive of the people before us, and that is very, very important when we're talking about preserving the culture.
Yes. Yes. Because also there's generational things that get lost very quickly as well. You know what I mean? So we need to like keep the nuance, but allow newer generations to add their things. Because, for
Hmm.
example, in the 90s, when I was a kid and like transitioning to junior high, because that was kind of also confusing for me, like transitioning from the States and Puerto Rico, because there's a lot of people in the States that consider high school from 7th to 12th grade. You know what I mean? But when you go to Puerto Rico, es intermedia y escuela superior. Intermedia would be like junior high, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and then escuela superior is 10, 11, 12. You know what I mean? So, and those schools are not mixed. Like in Puerto Rico, you get like las escuelas intermedias and then the high schools, which are the last 3 years. So you do have some instances in some places, especially in private schools, where they mix them all together, but it's a lot more rare in Puerto Rico than in the States. And for example, me during my 7th, 8th, and 9th grade years, I would hear melaza as something that they would say it's cool. That stopped being used. And then by the time you're in high school, if you use that word, people would make fun of you. But there's always these little gems that pop up within every generation. Because another one that I remember very well to denominate somebody that was so stuck up and so like come mierda that it was ridiculous or whatever. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm filling in the blanks because I never fully knew what that word meant. But during my last years of high school and my first years of university of college, a word that I would hear a lot in Carolina describing people es bichifoque. Tú eras un bichifoque.
Okay, what? I've
Tú sabes.
never heard that ever.
Exactly. You know. Y es como que no, porque ella cogió y después que se hizo el maquillaje y ahora que tiene el novio ese riquitillo, ella está bien bichifoque. Ella está bien bichifoque. Ahí tú sabes, bien, bien de esto. Y yo como que, wow, me fascina, me fascina cómo mi gente coge y mezcla palabras y hace palabras nuevas. Bitchy fuck it, wow. Es
You
como que,
know what?
I was
That's gonna be my challenge. I have to use that in a sentence today. Ay,
Y si estabas como que bien come mierda haciendo, guillándote de que tienes dinero, tú sabes, like showing off that you have money to a point that you look ridiculous. Escuchaba cuando decían bichifoque, tú sabes.
now the last part that we're gonna get into today is I know that the older generation still hasn't made the connection, right? That everything that you see on social media is not true, right? And I'm not gonna lie, my mom has social media, as does my grandmother. My grandmother has 2 Instagram accounts, believe it or not. And my mom is like on all social media. But because they have not seen the evolution of technology, right? They have not really been there to know how things have evolved when it comes to information. A lot of them do take what they see on social media at face value. I need people to understand, and I'm saying this even to people within our own generation, with people younger than us, that continually fall for the misinformation and the propaganda that they see on social media. If enough people post it, if enough people share it, if enough people are loud about it, a lot of people take that as fact. You know, we
Yeah.
are, we have nuances. Yes, we can make fun of things. We can, find the quirkiness in these things. But when it comes to factual information, we have to be very, very, very careful with what we share, what we repeat. I'm very big on when I have someone telling me something, right? I Google it, right? I'm an encyclopedia kid. So obviously I don't have fucking an encyclopedia just laying down someplace in my house, right? Nobody even owns that shit anymore. Maybe my grandmother does, probably. Pero I do not have the time to be going to the library, right? I'm going to have my laptop. I'm going to have my phone. I'm going to be looking things up. And then if I do not understand whatever this person told me, I'm going to ask. I am the person of 1,000 questions, right? Because I'm a firm believer there's no such thing as a stupid question. And because my ADHD sometimes gets triggered, I may need you to repeat it to me or, explain it to me a little bit more in depth. But
O
I,
dímelo
at the same
cantando.
Dímelo cantando, exacto. Or, yo voy a hacer la parte mía que voy a buscar esta información, right? We know this now when I'm doing now my deep dives into each municipality, right? I'm looking at solutions for the island as a whole. And then it's with me doing my deep dive on things in Puerto Rico, I'm tweaking solutions for each municipality, right? Because what will work for the island as a whole for the people that live on the coast is not really going to work for the people that are in the mountains or people scattered around the island. Everything that I do it to make myself better informed so that when we do have these conversations, I can bring sources, I can bring my facts, I can bring all these things because I am not a trust me bro type of person. And I'm gonna be honest, I really don't fucking pay attention to people who are on that trust me bro shit either. Right? It and I'm also very big, right? Because we do have people in our community, people who are informed about certain topics that because some of us are not informed will belittle us. Right? You can teach me, you can teach people within the culture without belittling them or making them feel like they're stupid because this is something that you learned and now they're on a different journey, right? I think that's another thing that we need to stop. And I'm not saying this is only Puerto Ricans, right? Because we have this issue across a lot of communities. But if our
Yeah.
focus is there with us connecting the diaspora, connecting the culture, calling our people home, we have to do it with a way that we are open to them being here. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm the type of person that if you're gonna talk to me like I'm stupid, I'm not gonna fucking talk to you again. Right?
Yes, and
I'm very quick with that.
Yes.
Go
And
ahead.
if you enjoy belittling people as part of teaching them, maybe consider like a pottery class or, you know, collecting stamps or
Learn how to
something
fucking knit.
something that keeps you away from teaching people, okay?
That
Something
part.
boring that keeps you away from people. Because maybe teaching is not for you. Yeah.
No, it's true, right? Because I've learned that on this app, right? I've encountered people that feel that if they're going to bring someone over to their side or see the bigger picture or understand where they're coming from or are even teachable, a lot of people talk at them. Talking at people,
Yes.
treating them like they're dumb, like they're incompetent, is not going to bridge the disconnect any faster. Sin embargo, it's going to further the divide. So if you are open to teaching people about the culture, about the history, about the language, the music, the food, if you're just trying to teach people on what the identity is of being a Puerto Rican, I beg you to please be mindful of your tone. I understand everyone is adults, but we all learn differently, right? And having a little bit of empathy when people are embarking on this journey will go a long way. Y ya.
Very beautifully said. You know, it might not have been spoken in reggaeton, but still very beautifully said.
You know, I told you I have my Dr. Phil moments. You know, I do have my little, my afterword, my afterthought. Sometimes I be spitting
I,
gems.
I prefer Montel. Dr. Phil is
Montel,
kind of crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you know what? But I'm trying to remember of like the 90s and the 2000s, all the talk shows. I think Jenny Jones is pretty good too, and Ricky Lake with the afterword, right? So that's
Jenny
that's that.
Jones, Ricky Lake, Montel. Hell, I'll take Oprah over
Phil
Dr. Phil.
Donahue, Phil
Yeah.
Donahue,
Yeah.
right? Con ese bigote ahí bien grandecito. Pero,
Yeah.
I just want people to just be open, right? And understand that you get more bees with honey than you do with salt, or however the fuck the saying goes, right? Like
Vinegar? Vinegar? I
vinegar,
think it
yo
was
no,
vinegar.
vinegar, sugar, flies, honey, bees, yo no say, you know what the fuck I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a brain fart to, really remember what the fuck the saying means.
It's
But
fine. You know that I can't judge you of getting those things wrong when I personally at one point in my life thought Scottie Pippen was part of the Beatles and not the Chicago Bulls. You know,
wait, seriously?
it was like, yeah, it was like Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and damn, what other name sounds very British that falls into Scottie Pippen? Yeah,
and, it,
Scottie
and
Pippen,
it's
that had to
actually
be it.
Ringo Starr. I don't know the other
Nobody
two.
remembers Ringo. Ringo is the least important member, so that he gets replaced by Scottie Pippen. It makes sense to me because nobody cared about Ringo. Let's be honest. Yeah,
You know what it is? I felt that for that time, his haircut was phenomenal. And I mean, a name like Ringo, is kind of badass for that time. So, he was probably my favorite Beatle, you know?
yeah, but Scottie Pippen from the Highlands, and then he's black. It painted a fabulous picture for me. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if you remember, there was a teen movie that came out when we were teenagers, and they're singing a song, and he's like, Scotty doesn't know, Scotty doesn't know. So when you said Scotty, that's the first thing that popped into my head. Fuck the
and that's
Beatles.
exactly what popped into my head for putting him in the Beatles in the first place.
Scotty doesn't know was a great fucking song for that era. But we
Look,
are opening up the panel. If anyone wants to come up and talk about what was discussed, what myths we debunked today, you are more than welcome to come up. It is 3:57 p.m. and we are opening up the panel. Not everyone gets shy now because I know there was a couple of comments in the chat. So I'm hoping, people are gonna put their buck where their mouth is, right, and come with the sources.
yes, yes, and also, and I know this goes into the realm of science fiction, but I'm kind of hoping that around 10,000 years from now, when our civilization collapses and it's part of archaeology diggings and findings and everything, somebody finds this clip recorded, and then being historians trying to reconstruct the Beatles. And I helped in the poor historical reconstruction, and historians 10,000 years from now actually believe and put it on textbooks that Scottie Pippen was part of the Beatles. We have these lost TikTok live audio clips that we recently discovered that change history as we know.
You know what? We have to be very careful of that before the colonizers go and tell us that we're leading to the erasure of their culture. So we still have to tread very lightly with that. Hi, Kuba. How are you today?
Cuba, que es la que hay, bienvenido.
I'm doing great. Just got done doing my Cuban shit. It's my day off, and I went and did some lawn care for some extra money.
Good shit. That's what we want to hear. So today we discussed debunking the triracialness of Puerto Ricans. We spoke about Taínos not going extinct, the fact that we speak Spanish and reggaeton, and that not everything on social media is believable. You have any thoughts?
I want to hear what was said about the transculturalization.
The who can
and
what?
The Taínos after that. I love both. About the transculturalization.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Tú estás en la playa, right? Ahí es ven.
No, I wanted to hear what you guys said about it.
Because what we were
I wanted to hear what you guys said about it.
No, what we were talking about is that the Taínos did like that, because this is the Mythbusters episode. So we were like talking about the whole Taínos went extinct is a myth that is being like perpetrated and being expanded. How they did not become extinct, and we were talking about how the DNA is evidence that they did not go extinct. How we still have so much part of our culture encompasses the Taíno culture, and extinct people would not give you anything to integrate into your culture.
Exactly.
And the fact that a lot of things that get glossed over. Yeah. Oh, and to finish what I'm
not even arguable because sorry.
No,
yeah,
it's
my
not even
Wi-Fi's
arguable.
in and out, so I didn't mean to cut you out. Yeah, my Wi-Fi.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Go on ahead.
Well, no, to finish, what I was going to say is that the fact that even right now, there are still tribes in the Orinoco and tribes in South America that are still very much Arawak, that have survived and have kept their practices almost intact. And anthropologists and archaeologists are studying them because they have similarities and they have parallels to how the Taíno lived. That even though they're not, they have a different Arawak language or whatever, they're putting pieces together out of those tribes that are still alive today down there. And the fact that there's Arawak tribes still living in the same way the Taínos were living back before pre-Columbian times is evidence that we do not go extinct.
Yeah. The main trunk of the Taíno tree is the Locono people. And the Locono people are still very much active. But not only that, you take our islands, okay? Of course, I'm going to use my reference point, Cuba. It's Guajiro culture, Campesino Cuban culture is Taíno culture with African and Spanish influence. It's not Spanish culture with African and Taíno influence. No, it's Taíno culture. They still live in Bojillos. They still maintain their conuco. They still use the coa and the conuco. We still use traditional ways of making casabe. We still use our lunar maps when it comes to planting. Taíno culture is still very much alive in Cuba.
And that is amazing.
We still have our words that we never use a Spanish word for. Like in Cuba, we don't say, and I forget it sometimes, we don't say tortuga, we say jicotea. We don't say gemelo, we say jimawa. We
Oh,
still believe in
nice.
cahuirros. We still believe, yep. In the countryside, we still believe in cahuirros. We still believe in the siwapa. You don't want to get, if you see a beautiful woman desnuda con pelo hasta pie, like, you don't want to follow her into the forest. It's not going to turn out well for you. When we hear a bujo, we say solo vaya, because we still believe when you hear a bujo, that especially if it's flying over your home, that means that somebody from your home is going to become unalive. So you say solo vaya, like go on your own, like don't take anybody with you, because we believe that the bujo is the messenger for Makatare Wayawa, who is the Lord of the land of the unalive.
I see.
We still do our tobacco ceremonies to the four corners of the earth. And our conucos, well, now it got to the point to where it's coins, but traditionally it was it was either carved out of stone or it was made out of clay. It's a three-cornered image of Jukahu, who was the main deity of the Taíno. So, but now we put coins in our conuco to give back to Itabakahubaba, Mother Earth, to make our crops grow. And the first of the crops after harvest are given back to the earth as a thing.
And I'm not gonna lie, that is beautiful. I love the fact that so many things are still part of the everyday culture, right? And I'm pretty sure that if, a lot of us were able to go back to Puerto Rico, that we can actually see these things. We'll see a lot of that also happening within the island, right? So I think it's such a beautiful thing that these the cultural aspects of the Taíno are still very much part of the culture there.
You know what my abuela told me once, because I was asking about our family history. She said that her abuela didn't believe in Catholicism. She believed in the sun and the moon. And she didn't have a Spanish name. She had a Taíno named Warina.
Oh, wow. See, I love things like that, because I feel like these are the stories that are, whenever we're talking about things being lost or things being extinct, we do need those, and those stories that are passed down from family to family, because that's the only way we're going to continue to reconnect with the culture and continue to embrace it and allow it to continue to grow, right? It's when we lose that connection to it, we're losing a very big part of who our identity is and what the identity of our ancestors were.
I felt
Nonsense. You want to say anything?
Nonsense was on the live yesterday.
How about that?
No.
Nonsense was on the live. Nonsense was on the live yesterday. I had cammed up, and Pantera was like, "Oh." He was like, you definitely got a Taíno in you. He said, "You're the first Cuban I've ever seen that looked indigenous Cuban."
No way.
Said, yeah, it's definitely in there.
¿A dónde carajo yo estaba?
But see, that's kind of, I don't remember if it was my live or Nonsense live.
No, it was your live, because I remember, because it's like you were talking to him and I just stayed quiet so you could continue having that conversation with Pantera, and you were having the issues that we were wondering where Mimi was so she could guide you in putting the images in the live, like all that stuff.
I was probably napping.
Y tú dijiste, Mimi, ¿dónde yo estaba? Y aquí vamos a otra frase puertorriqueña. ¿Tú sabes lo que significa NPI?
No.
Ni puta idea de dónde tú estabas.
I like that one. I know ni puta idea, but I didn't know it was NPI.
Yeah.
Yeah, we figured it out though. You guided me. I decided to change the format.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I didn't learn lives I did not learn it. Like it literally took a lot of trial and error for me to understand doing the lives. There's still a lot of things about it I don't know, and I do not care to know, right? Because we won't be doing battles, right, for this account. That's never been something that interested me. I'm a little bit too shy for that. But like the little tweaks, like the little noises, figuring out how to do certain things, I've kind of learned it as I went, or thankfully you always meet people who are willing to help, right? There's not a lot of gatekeepers on TikTok with learning how to actually use the lives. So whatever knowledge I got, I'm always sharing it over.
Yeah.
Pero todo a su tiempo, poquito a poquito. Vamos a ver, el gato.
Yeah, my prima, she ain't
Go ahead, Cuba, I'm sorry.
No, my prima, she came. She was in the comments. She was like, "Look at you." She said, "You didn't have technology for 20 years." And she like, "You're more advanced than me." She said, "All I do is scroll on here."
Facts. Listen, I had said I was never gonna get on TikTok, and someone had told me that it was TikTok that had convinced them to vote for the Cheeto. And I'm like, let me get on this shit to find out what the hell ate this person's brain up, because ain't no fucking way. And then I just started meeting people, and people that I knew in real life are on here, and I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna be doing no dances porque soy demasiado vieja para esto. Pero I will take the opportunity now to start getting to know people and broadening my friend group, because I was very much so one or two friend person. So here, this allowed me to connect with people, learn. A lot of people inspired me to dive deeper into my history, into my culture, inform myself on, how things are on the island, and I give a whole bunch of credit to the people that I've connected on here, that they have helped me immensely with me reconnecting with some of my culture that I had lost. So social media is not always bad. It's, in moderation.
Yeah. Well, when I was incarcerated, my perception of TikTok was Jevasitos balando. Like I thought that's all TikTok was.
Mm-hmm.
But just like girls is out here just doing like TikTok dances and stuff. Till I got TikTok, and I'm like, oh, okay, I could really do some real activism on here.
That part. When it comes to that and helping, you and I speak the same language.
Yeah.
I know this is a little bit random and taking a little bit off topic that you guys were talking about, but another myth that I want to tackle for my people in Puerto Rico.
Go ahead.
And this is a toda la gente que está viendo de la isla y todo eso. Please let's correct the myth de que 7-Up or Sprite is a proper replacement para un veterinario for your dog, and it's a cure-all thing. Please, let's stop that.
I mean,
ay, el perrito está mal, dale un poco de 7-Up ahí. Eso pero llevarlo al veterinario, no, eso es muy caro. Llevarlo al veterinario, dale 7-Up y para el carajo. Okay.
I mean, but I guess that's also the same thing, right? Que para nosotros el Vex cura todo. Oh, tienes una espina en la cara, ponte Vex. Te cortaste, ponte Vex. No tienes sueño, ponte Vex. Right? Because Vex lo va a curar todo. Está llorando, ponte Vex. Ya, y todo va a estar bien.
Put it on your feet. Put it on your feet, put your socks on, put it on your chest, you're good to go.
Yes, no, y también un hack que la tía mía me enseñó, right? Because la tía mía es diabética. So she's always had like her feet get very, very dry, right? So, and then, usually that's one of the first places where they'll get an infection or it doesn't heal, a cut, because of the diabetes. So one thing that my aunt had told me when I was younger, she's like, if this ever happens to you y tú te encuentras que eres diabética o que tienes los pies que están un poquito seco o whatever, ponte Vicks en el heel, right? Y ponte las medias. Y tú vas a ver en 2 días, tú vas a tener baby butt smooth feet.
No, no, o sea, eso es levemente incorrecto porque Atabey acaba de decir algo que tiene mucha razón. Eso no funciona sin el sana, sana culito de rana, ¿ok?
Ok,
Si no
¿cómo
se
fue que
sana
ustedes lo
hoy,
dijeron?
se sana mañana. Atabey fue la que lo trajo estas duras realidades a nuestro,
Es,
a
ok,
nuestro podcast. Ella tiene
pero
razón.
yo quiero saber cómo que
No
ustedes
vale
lo
nada.
dicen. ¿Cómo que ustedes lo dicen? Porque la forma mía de decirlo aparentemente es incorrecta. Right? So, my family was sana culito que no sana hoy, sana mañana. That was the way that my family always said it.
No, a nosotros en Puerto Rico era sana, sana, culito de rana. Si no se sana hoy, se sana mañana. It was like Mother Goose, but in Spanish, and way more impatience, because we're in a hurry, so you can get your ass to school, you know.
I'm not gonna lie, una vez la nena mía se me cayó y se dio un cantazo en la frente. And I remember que con la sal y la mantequilla se lo puse, le dije, sana, sana culito que no sana, sana, sana mañana. And I'm assuming that my grandmother probably did her own remix to it. And like she cut it short, she took out the crana, it was just basically sana culito. That's it.
Yeah, because she doesn't know how to rap. You know that she wasn't a foundational hip hop institution. La ranita de sana, sana, culito de rana, sí. O sea, estuvo ahí con los. Sana, sana, culito de rana estuvo ahí con los breakdancers, estuvo ahí con los DJs, o sea, tú sabes.
Now you touched on another myth, right? With the whole rap thing, right? Because that's always a big conversation. I don't get involved because for me personally, I just like music. I've never really cared about who influenced what, who created what, who was at the table when they were talking about these things, right? But because you've been in the industry, I figured why not ask your take on this? Or you do not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
I usually do not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I barely want to, touch it with an M52 Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle at more than 2 miles away. But you know what? Let's dive into it, and I'm not gonna go too deep on it, but I will say, yeah, hip hop is foundationally black. You know what I mean? It comes from New York, and you cannot deny that it comes from black culture. Period. That's their culture, but we had a huge influence on it. We had a huge collaborations on it. We added not only our grains of salt, but we added our fistfuls of salt to it, And the reality is that at the end of the day, we had so much to bring to the table because, in a way, what gets misconstrued is that also we cannot take away that a lot that Puerto Ricans brought to the table in terms of hip hop was also from our African roots, you know? Like las pistas, the drums, how we did everything, like hasta el breakdancing, you can eventually bring it back to some sort of precursors. And this is where a lot of people misconstrue this because a lot of people forget and try to get mad when you say precursors, but people forget that the precursor is not the same as the evolved genre or the evolved form. A precursor has certain elements that are base and essential to a foundation to then build on something completely different. So there's a lot of precursors even there that within Puerto Rican culture, if you go far back, they're part of our African side. So this is where we have a lot to bring to the table because there's a lot in the Caribbean that evolved independently and brought its own flavor into the mix that we were very much capable of collaborating with and adding to the art form itself.
My bad. I was responding to a text.
It's fine.
Pero that's for me. I've never looked at it to the sense of I can understand, right? Because we Puerto Ricans, we are some proud motherfuckers, right? We look at even the accomplishments of people that are Puerto Rican, of Puerto Rican descent. You know, we always look at as one of our people achieving something, it means all of us achieved it, right? So we do have those bragging rights within us, right? Me personally, nunca it was never that big deal for me, right? Especially because I grew up in New York, right? So it was like, okay, hip hop culture, I was immersed in it, right? But because I was also very much immersed in Black culture, I was immersed in Puerto Rican culture, right? So I grew up listening to Biggie Smalls, but I'm also listening to Puerto Rican house music, right? And, I will house you, shit like that, right? I grew up on freestyle. Freestyle on Saturdays, for the most part, was our cleaning music, right? Where we're cleaning walls, we're cleaning everything to make sure everything, you can see your fucking reflection in everything. But I see now that this conversation just keeps getting brought up and brought up. And we have those within our community and other communities who either want to deny our involvement in its, creation, but also we have those that want to take far more credit than what should be taken, right? And I still feel that even with however many times we have this conversation, we still cannot find a happy medium, right?
Yes,
Because
and that's
go
because we
ahead.
were what?
I was gonna say because we have people who like that is very much such a big part of their identity. The music they grew up on the hip hop, they know of the history behind it, but they want to, like I said, they want to take more credit than than credit that we should take, right? And I think that's the only part that I kind of have. I disalign with a lot of people on that sense because I feel at the end of the day, we can say yes, we were influential on it. Yes, we partook in the culture, we in the creation of it. But I don't feel that we have to take all the credit, right? And I think that's what a lot of us need to also come to terms with.
No, we don't, and we actually need to do a better job in calling out the people that take too much credit out of it and get us in trouble with other communities. You know what I mean? We have to do a better job than that. But also at the same time, it's we have something that other cultures, especially in the US, and I would say the US more so than anywhere else, they take it the wrong way how we do our things.
Mm-hmm.
And that because the fact of the matter is that when Puerto Ricans do something or like something, they add their own flavor, they add their own style, they add their own way of doing it. Like, if, look, if there is an instruction manual on how to revamp the engine of a Honda Civic, a Puerto Rican is going to throw that manual away, va a remover el catalítico, it's going to make it sound louder, and you're going to get the same results. But then when you put it back together, it's like there are 5 screws left over where you don't know where they went. And it's like, these might be important. There are way too many screws left over, and I don't see any other hole where these could go. You know what I mean? And it's like, what did I just do without following the instructions? But it runs,
It
it wins the
works.
races,
Yeah.
and it's flashy, and people are like, damn, how you do that? Y nosotros hacemos eso con muchas cosas, with a lot of things.
I'm
We,
guilty
we,
of that. I am guilty of
we,
that because I don't really follow
Mhm.
instructions when it comes to building shit. I wing it. Nine
Yeah.
times out of 10 me sale bien. But I get that from my
Y-
grandpa.
Yes, and the fact of the matter is that we do it so well and so uniquely that it becomes something new for people, you know. And some people hate that because, and this is an example of how we do things. Like, there's tons of debates because this is not the only debate. Anytime a Puerto Rican touches music, there's going to be controversy. It's not just hip hop. Whatever
That's true.
music we touch, it becomes controversial.
We see this with the
And,
salsa now too, a lot.
and thank you. I was going to get to that. And the reggaeton with the Panamanians or whatever. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, people do not get mad until we put it on the spotlight and we're the ones that monetize the most out of it, you know, because ejemplo, en Korea, there's a huge movement of Korean reggaeton. You know what I mean? They're doing reggaeton in Korean. I will show you the clips.
Oh,
once
please
we
do.
get out of here.
Please do.
And the other thing is that my FYP feed on TikTok is full of Japanese women singing salsa.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna have to do the shared feed again.
Yes, and here's the thing: every time you see the Japanese doing salsa, every time you see the Koreans doing reggaeton, it's not a Panamanian flag, it's not a Cuban flag, it's a Puerto Rican flag behind it. You can go Google search restaurantes de salsa in Japón, where there's little bands of Japanese people singing salsa and covering people like Gilberto Santa Rosa, you know, doing covers. And it's Puerto Rican flags behind them, you know. And that's the thing. We do it so loud and proudly and well because the fact of the matter is that when it comes to that music and comes to those things, we're not loud and wrong. We're loud, unique, and catchy, and infectious and viral. And we do it so well that, yes, salsa might have been Cuban, but when it comes to the rest of the world hearing it, they're hearing it under a Puerto Rican lens, and they're putting Puerto Rican flags. So that goes to show you how well we can run with something and how it rubs other cultures off the wrong way. And even though technically we did nothing wrong in that sense, because we are just expressing the art that's within our hearts and everything, other cultures want the credit. And the fact of the matter is that the loudest people are the ones that want to like erase us, because the reality is there's many people in those cultures that get impressed and want to collaborate with us. And then there's this small vocal and loud minority that just simply wants to erase us because they get frustrated with that because it's not how they want to do it, you know. But then the vast majority, when you look at it outside of social media, outside of TikTok, outside the algorithms, they're very much accepting and very much impressed with what we do.
I always wonder, why do these other cultures have an issue with giving us our flowers, right? And again, it's not a majority. I can't say that all Panameños feel that way. I can't say that all Cubans feel that way. But like you said, the loudest ones have an issue with giving Puerto Ricans their flowers. So much so that they're even now saying that Puerto Ricans are not Latino. We shouldn't identify under whatever umbrella, be it Latino, Caribeño, Hispano. They continually try to gatekeep us out of something that should, granted, it's an American term, right? The Latino, the Hispanic, whatever, or wherever it stems from. They struggle with allowing us to also connect with them and share the culture as well. And it always boggles my mind, right? Because I'm a firm believer too that culture is something that should be shared. You know, we should be sharing our culture, our food, you know, our colloquialisms, everything that makes us us, you know, it's always should be an equal give and take. But the issue is that they either minimize our contributions or our influence in things. And I'm accepting of everyone, right? And I always struggle with that as why people aren't the same way. right? Because I can give people their flowers and be like, you know what? Yes, you did this, and yes, you did that, or your community contributed to this. I always wonder, why is that sentiment not reciprocated?
Yes. And that part is one that I know that a lot of people kind of roll their eyes with me and keep like, oh, you dislike the United States of America so much that you left it to the Philippines and now all you do is bash it and roll their eyes with it. But I'm sorry, but this is something that I feel that has been taken from, because let's not deny it. The biggest music industry is in the United States. The biggest control of the music industry as a whole is in the United States. Yeah. You can have very influential, very powerful regional labels like in the UK or anything, but they do not hold the same power today as they did, for example, during the British invasion era. You know what I mean? And that falls back to like Scottie Pippen and the Beatles. Sorry, Ringo. You know, but they hold much of the influence, and by by proxy, a lot of the attitude that the artists take comes from this business model and how people believe the industry worked and how it should be. And if there's if there's an industry, because when it comes to celebrities, especially, like, there are actors in the film industry where I have worked with that are unsufferable, that they're very full of themselves. But when it comes to musicians, it's 10 times more common to see an arrogant musician than it is for me to see an arrogant actor. You know, with actors, it's like evenly distributed into quirky, eccentric, come mierda, insoportable. And then there's their rare, oh, you're a good person. You're like very grounded, down to earth. Those are rare. But when it comes to music, yo veo esa come mierdería hasta en los más indie, hasta en los más pelados, hasta en los que no tienen ni un centavo. Que cuando hacen un video de música, the jewelry and the grills in their teeth are rented, you know. Y pues, en mi experiencia personal en la industria, I haven't seen more arrogant and self-centered people by concentration than the music industry. And that leaks off to the culture of entitlement, of how they should be, who should be performing this music, who should not be performing this music, who is allowed, who isn't. And that comes a lot, you know. And these are people that are the ones that always complain of what is art or what is music or what is this or what is that, you know. These are the people that are, when you get to them as artists, they're like anti-producers, because producers do not put anything or do not contribute anything constructive to my art. They only limit me. Or auto-tune. Auto-tune is not auto-tune, you know, degrades the art because it's fake vocals or whatever. Oh, the same thing with synthesizers and sampled beats. Oh, sample beats are just destructive or dilute the art or lower the quality. Learn how to actually play your instrument instead of just mixing and matching and mashing samples on Fruity Loops. And there's, or whatever audio you want, you know. So there's always going to be people in this industry that are very arrogant, very entitled. And then we have taught in the United States that to be a fan is not just about listening to the music and liking it, and simply you heard something, you like it, play it and enjoy it, and that's it. No, in the United States, because we need to market, we need to merchandise, we need to squeeze every penny out of it because of capitalism. In the US, it's become, oh no, you're not a fan until you follow your favorite artist on social media, until you hang on every word they say, until you buy their merchandise, until you go on a crusade and fight and go to the comments of other people that disagree with your artist and fight on behalf of them, and be trolling in the comments. Oh, XYZ artist is right. Auto tune dilutes the art, or XYZ artist is right. This is an insult to music or whatever, and I have to go with other people and fight. And it's made like that to monetize on, because if you are connected and you know the history of your favorite artist, if you know their favorite ice cream, if you hang to every word of them on social media, if you become so hardcore that you follow them blindly and fight for them, then you're going to be an asset for me that I can sell you merchandise of him. And I want somebody that if they have to choose between eating their lunch at work because they're living paycheck to paycheck, or buy a Funko Pop of their favorite artist or a t-shirt, they will go for the Funko Pop or the t-shirt, because we are rewarding people for being that hardcore and that loyal to it. And that's an American model. That's a corporate model of the record industry in America. We have to believe in sacrificing ourselves for our favorite artists as if they were borderline deities. And that trickles down to people, because if you hear an artist saying, Puerto Ricans contributed nothing to hip hop and they're your favorite artist and they're your ride or die, you are going to go on a crusade with that statement for them without even having to do the research. That has been normalized in America. And that's why I kind of took it there on that rant.
No, that's fine. I always want you, right? If you are knowledgeable in something, especially in something that I'm not knowledgeable, or if we're out, especially for today's episode, right, where we're talking about debunking these things, I definitely always want you to take the wheel on that, right? Because they are not, I don't want to say it in the sense that I don't care, but it's really not there on my list of things I need to learn to reconnect. So whenever we're talking about these things, the industry, the music, our influence on it, I always, always, always want you to take the lead on that, because frankly, it's not on my to-do list in anywhere within the immediate foreseeable future. You know? Oh, and by the way, I did create some stickers. If you could see to the chat, that's one of the
Oh,
stickers I added
nice. I
so
do
that
see them. Yes.
whenever anyone wants to become part of our fan club, they'll have access to Mofongo Diary stickers, and Puerto Rican centered stickers as well. So then, everyone can always pretty up the chat también. So it's a
Yep.
good thing that we just did right
La
now.
tierra de Borinquen que
¿A dónde?
llenito el podio.
I was going to sing the actual one, and I was like, espérate, no, 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 no. You're going someplace else. But I think this actually concludes today's episode. ¿Qué piensas?
Yes, I think we have enough. We can continue with either the live Mimi After Dark style or whatever, if anybody else still wants to come up, or any final thoughts for today.
All I want to say is that whenever you hear these things, right, I urge everyone to just take a couple of seconds to confirm or deny whatever is being told to you as fact. It doesn't discredit the person, but it also reinforces your knowledge into what this person is telling you, right? Because the last thing any of us want to do is spread misinformation, spread things that are doing or can do our communities a disservice. And also not to put us at odds with other communities, right? We're talking a lot about bridging the gap within the diaspora, but we're also focused on bridging the gap with a lot of communities that we've lost that connection with. So always, when we're having these topics on our culture, on our identity, you know what? Take a breath, listen first, process the information, then respond. Don't go into things already defensive without having the facts to back up your claim. I urge everyone, because we are only two people trying to combat the misinformation, trying to bridge the connect, but it takes all of us to put our part. At the end of the day, if we want to have our island for us, we want to preserve our culture, we want to preserve our food, we want to preserve the core being of who we are. You know, the onus is now on the rest of us to combat this, and not necessarily silence the ones that are loud and wrong, but inform them, educate them, speak to them from a place of empathy, because like that, we will gain more people to fight for our cause and the causes of these communities when we are together. And, I'm going to sound like a cliche. At the end of the day, we are always stronger with unity. We are always stronger when we have the numbers to get the things done that we want to do, and it starts with us.
Amén. Y mejor
Amén.
sonar un poquito como cliché que bichifoque. 1000 veces mejor.
Bichifoque. Melaza. That's another word I learned.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, good night.